Have you been wanting to reinvent yourself and you're wondering what your options are, maybe for a different life? Then you'll probably want to keep watching, and especially if you've thought that maybe your reinvention might involve moving abroad and living in a different country over the age of 30, over the age of 35 even, because that's exactly what my guest today did. At the age of 35, she just got this feeling that she was supposed to be in another country, and the feeling wouldn't leave her. And even though she didn't really have a plan, she didn't really have any career opportunities, she went ahead and made the leap. And that's what she gives in today. And what her story shows is just the power of intention and how a net will appear. But you also hear some tips and tricks about getting a visa in Spain, different visa options that exist, and how you can build a community and have that community lead you to job after job and also your new career. So if you're over the age of 35, or you just like listening to women over the age of 35 talking about how they reinvented themselves to inspire you in your own reinvention journey, then please keep listening for this great interview with Cepee Tabibian. You're gonna love it. So tell me where you are and tell me what's the view from your window.
Yes, so I am in southern Spain in a city called Malaga. This is actually the birthplace of Picasso and Antonio Banderas.
Oh, I didn't know
And
that. Okay.
yes, those are the claims to fame here. And I will say from my window, I have a snippet, a very small view of the Mediterranean Sea, which is quite nice.
Nice. How long of a walk is it to get to the beach?
Oh, yeah, it looks further than it is. So while I only have a snippet here from my office window, it's actually like a 7 or 8 minute walk down to the water.
That sounds pretty nice. And when people ask you what you do when you meet them in a conference or party, what do you say?
Yes, I love this
Sometimes that's a
question.
hard answer when you do so many different things.
It is. And I've actually been refining this as my business grows. But so what I do is I help women age 30 and over transform their lives by moving abroad. And I do that through coaching, classes or courses, and community.
Nice. Especially the community called She Hit Refresh, which is a great name. And I'm a member of that community. So, how did this story of yours start?
Yes. Well, first off, thank you for being a member of She Hit Refresh. I love
Yeah.
that. So my story starts, I mean, there's different stages, but I'll start at the most
And I
recent. That
do
is
want to go over each stage, but I kind of like want to get the beginning.
Yes. So let's take it back to Austin, Texas, and let's go to 2014,
Okay.
where I was living a pretty conventional American life. I'm from Houston, Texas, but had been living in Austin for a few years. I had a good job. I worked at a tech company in the recruiting department, although my background is not in recruiting. It was a lifestyle where I went to work, worked out afterwards, went home to eat dinner, and kind of sat on the couch and watched Netflix. So, it
Mhm.
was a comfortable life, an easy life, but it was also very predictable and monotonous, which wasn't really how I had lived my life for much of my adult life. I loved to travel when I was in my 20s, and a lot of my time was spent traveling, exploring, and not sitting at home on the couch. So,
Mhm. I
while
can
I
really relate to that. I had a similar background, and then I also found myself in a PR job. And at some point, I remember just feeling I'm really depressed. Was there a moment like that for you?
Yeah, I mean, I wasn't depressed, so I definitely like to stress, like, I had a good life. I wasn't
Mhm.
I in it when I was in it. Sometimes when you're in it, you don't realize, what how that how it is actually, right? So it wasn't
Mhm.
until I kind of got out of my environment on a trip that I was able to reflect of like, "Oh, wow, like, I'm kinda sleepwalking in Austin, Texas."
So, where was that trip
Yeah,
and when was
so
it?
So that trip was that year, 2014. For my 34th birthday, I gifted myself a trip to Morocco. And it was like a running trip. So, I was really big into marathons and half marathons and triathlons. And this wasn't a race, but it was just like, a trip where you're running through different parts of Morocco. And on the way back to Austin from that trip, I decided to stop in Madrid for a few days. And Madrid is a city I had lived in before. I had actually lived there 4 years prior and done a master's. But I hadn't been back since. And those 4 days in Madrid were magical and really awakened something inside that actually had been dormant in those past 4 years in Austin that I didn't realize. So that's what I mean. When I was in Austin, I wasn't depressed, but I actually didn't realize like how kind of little my world maybe had gotten compared to when I was in Madrid. And so just being in this vibrant city, Madrid, for those few days, a walkable city, a city with energy, a city that never sleeps, it really just gave me life in a way that I didn't have in Austin. And that was my wake up call.
And so what did you do right when you got back? Did you immediately act on it, or did you have the immediate idea that you wanted to move to Spain, or did that idea come later?
No, I mean, that felt crazy at the time. So I was reveling in that high of being in Spain. And I did have like the little inkling, like, oh, yeah, that was so fun. Wouldn't it be cool to live there again? I wasn't serious at first, but I would say that idea started growing and really started taking over my thoughts as the weeks went by, the months went by. That's when I started being curious about, oh, how can we do this again? Right. Because, like I said, I had studied there, done a master's, I had taught English in my 20s, but I was 34, about to turn 35 at this point. So that's when I was like, how could I do this at my age and what would I do? And then it just became like, how can I do this? It wasn't like what, it was like, how we're doing
Mhm.
this. I'm convinced I have to get out of Austin. I have a good life here, but it was getting in the way of a great life. And I knew Spain, or I felt that Spain just had that great life
Yeah.
that I wanted.
And then you discovered something, you discovered a way, which is something that I did a similar program in France right out of college. But you discovered a program in Spain that I think is so cool because it has no age limit. It's basically the same program that I did, but there's no age limit from what I can tell. And what was that program that you found?
Yes. So I did the NALCAP program, which is the North American Language and Cultural Assistant Program, which actually has an age limit, I think, of 60 now. I
Okay.
think there's some similar programs that maybe don't have an age limit. And you know what? I had come back and revisited this program because I actually did this program in my 20s when I was 26. So that was hard because I knew about this program, but I never wanted to go back and do it because it almost felt like a step back, right?
I can totally understand. So, how did you deal with that feeling of taking a step back? You're in your 30s, it's the prime of your life. You're supposed to be at the prime of your career, working your way up.
Yeah.
How did you get over that mentally?
Yeah. So I, looked for many other options. I'm like, this can't be the only option. What else is there? What are there any new options? No, there wasn't. It kept coming back to this is the way to get your foot in the door. And so you're really going to have to put your ego aside because not only did I feel like I was taking a step back, but also I was afraid of what people would think. So I had that fear of judgment. What are people going to say? Me leaving in a good job at 35 to go teach English without really having a plan of what I'm going to do afterwards. So I just kind of had to have a heart to heart with myself and say, you know what? That's fine. People are going to judge me. That's fine. I have to believe in myself. And I know this is what I want to do. I have this like nagging feeling and something is pulling me towards it.
Mhm.
And I just have to remind myself, what is the worst case scenario? Right?
Yeah, and so, this was just, like a toe in the door. It's just, like, not your ultimate destination, but explain a little bit, what does the NALCAP program give you? It gives you a visa for a year, doesn't it?
Oh, yes. I didn't explain what it is. So the NALCAP visa, it's a teaching assistant program run by the government in Spain. So the great thing, the reason why it's a foot in the door for a lot of Americans, especially at the time before now there's a digital nomad visa, which is a more viable option. But at the time, this was the best option because it does give you a visa, it gives you a student visa because you are teaching English and you receive a grant. So you're kind of there under student terms. But it also gives you health insurance and it gives you that stability because you feel like you have some support, you have some income. It's not a
Mhm,
lot. I mean, it was about €1,000 a month.
mhm.
But at the same time, I was working about 16 hours a week. So it just felt like it gave me foundation and it got me to Spain, which is what I needed in order to figure out what was next.
Right.
Right.
So many times when we're at a certain age in our life, we think, "I can't go back," but sometimes going back is just a way to kind of carve out the new path, and so I really like that. So then after your year, actually tell me about when you first got to, was it Madrid? Was
Yes,
your
that's my
so
trip.
you fell in love with Madrid. You were kind of, were you able to choose where you wanted to go, or was that just luck that you got sent to Madrid?
Yeah, so in the program, you can't put your top three regions in Spain, and I selected Madrid, and I got placed in Madrid. So I was very happy about that.
So what was your first week like in Spain? What was it like when you first stepped off the plane and that first week that you were there? Were you happy?
Oh my God.
Scared?
No, it was pure joy and elation. Um, I was on cloud nine and just was so giddy and had that childlike wonder walking around, even though I had lived in the city, but I just have so much love for Madrid that I just really felt like I was in my place. And I was in awe that I actually had done it. It was almost like hard to believe, like, I'm here and this is my life. And I spent a lot of time that first week rekindling with friends that I had made, but also just walking around the city and just taking it all in.
And how hard was it to at that point, I don't know if you had a partner. I assume that you were single, but maybe I shouldn't. But how did you she's nodding her head yes. How did you she was single. How did you explain this to family? Friends and family, but especially family.
Yeah. So luckily, my family was kind of used to this. So travel, as I said, was a big part of my younger life, and that was international travel, and I was quitting jobs left and right to travel. So my family was this wasn't anything new for them. This yearning to live abroad and wanting to live abroad, but
Okay.
they were a little bit, concerned because of my age,
Mhm.
because they were wondering, all right, well, what about your career? You're giving up your career to go teach English, and nothing wrong with that, but I'm not an English teacher, and that's not something I wanted to do. They
Mhm.
were also concerned about how this would impact, or not concerned, but they would ask questions like, well, don't you want to get married or have kids? Things like that. So there were a lot of fears that they had about me doing this. But I think they knew I was going to do it anyways, but maybe they weren't sure that it was going to work out.
So they knew that there was no point trying to convince you otherwise. They were just expressing their concerns. I
Exactly.
similar, actually, similar to me. Um, Speaking of finances, some people save for a long time before they take a trip. I also, I don't know if you did, but I moved abroad with not really planning anything. It kind of sounds like that's what you did, but ha- did you have anything saved up or did you just go for it?
Yeah, so I did have savings. So I will
Okay.
say every time I kind of had my stints abroad, I was responsible and saved money, because at the time, remote work wasn't a thing. So you really weren't able to work while you were abroad, right? You really had to have money to sustain you for your time there. So I did have savings that I knew that would supplement my income from the program I was in, because I just knew that I couldn't live on €1,000 a month. So I had savings, and from the time I had the idea of I wanted to move to Spain to the time I actually did it was about a year. So I did have somewhat of a game plan to get there in that first year, maybe. But
Okay.
it was like figuring out what was next was what I needed to do.
Yes. I want to hear about what happened after that, but I am curious, what was the experience like when you were there? What age children were you teaching?
So I was placed in a secondary school. So that would be the equivalent of like a high school. And my students were probably anywhere from 13 to maybe 17 years old.
Mhm. And what was the experience like? Did you enjoy it or was it I mean, teaching English can be really hard, but, just curious about your day-to-day life at that era.
Yeah, it was wonderful. I was really fortunate to be placed in a school that was very welcoming. I mean, most people are, but every experience is different in this program. So the staff was very welcoming, the students were very welcoming, and that made it just so much easier to like walk into a classroom and to be able to interact with them and feel comfortable there. And I will say, in this program, you don't have to have qualifications, teaching
Mhm.
qualifications, which I didn't have, because you're not teaching grammar. Really, I was just teaching culture and helping with the conversation. So, talking about Thanksgiving and having them do vocabulary. So it was really fun. I could create fun lesson plans. Um,
Was it
and
every
most,
day? Did you have to
it
work
was,
every day?
yeah, luckily it wasn't every day. It was 4 days a week. And I think I
Nice.
had Fridays off. So I had that nice long weekend. Um, and yeah, and it was actually a little bit outside of Madrid, city center. So I took a bus every morning, got there, did my time, and went back home.
It's kind of a cool option that you say it's not the best option, but it is nice to know that there are options like that that exist. I know that several other women in your community have also kind of used that program as their foot in the door to living in Europe. Some of them don't even end up living in Spain, they end up living in different countries. Would you recommend that to somebody maybe if they don't really have any other options or they can't figure out any other options? Would that be a program that you think is a viable option still?
Yeah, I mean, I think it depends on what your ultimate goal is. I mean, I like to think of this program as kind of a working sabbatical. So if
Okay.
you're looking to slow down your life a little bit, but you still want a little income, but don't want a big commitment, I think this is a great program to give you that space. Maybe you know you want to change, but you don't know exactly what that change is. So
Hmm.
why not take this working sabbatical to give you a year to think about maybe what you want to do in your life, or maybe to feel out Spain. I think it's a great option for that. It
I
is
love
not.
that. A working sabbatical. That's a
Yeah,
good way to
sorry.
think about it. Yeah. They give you a visa for a year. Does it, with that visa, is the next visa easier, or are you back to ground zero after the visa expires?
Yeah, so the visa is issued for the duration of the school year, which is like 9 or 10 months. You can renew, so there's the option to renew. And so you don't have to start at ground zero, but there are limitations on the renewals, and I actually don't know what they are right now. I think it might be 2 or 3 years with this specific program.
Okay. But
There are.
it
I'm
doesn't
sorry.
make it easier to go to the next type of visa. It's just
Uh,
renewing that same type of visa.
Mm. Actually, this is such a great question. Actually, now it does make it easier to change visas. Before it wasn't
Oh,
as easy, but now it is a lot easier. Like once you're in Spain, to modify your visa. So
so that could be a really good foot in the door for somebody who A, wants just a working sabbatical, and then B, maybe wants to consider living in Europe. So
yes.
I think it's great to know that things like this exist. And with the age limit of 60, what I did in France was very similar, but the age limit was 30. And so I love
Mhm.
that these programs exist. So after your year working as an English assistant, a language assistant, you probably decided that you didn't want to keep doing that forever, but I'm assuming you wanted to keep living in Spain. So what did you do next?
Yeah, so I definitely knew when I moved to Spain, like this was going to be a 1 year thing. But and my plan was I'm going to just shoot my shot everywhere, and that meant I was applying to every job out there that I felt I could do, knowing that a work visa is very difficult to come by. I had lived in Spain before. I had tried to get a work visa, never had luck. So I knew the odds were against me. Um, and so from day one, I was applying for jobs. But when it came time to when I had the option to renew to stay at the school an extra year, I didn't have a job yet. So I renewed
Okay.
um, with the school. And then a few weeks later, I had a job interview that actually led to work visa sponsorship. So it's
Oh,
kind of funny how that worked out. But so that was like what happened next. And that was a very pivotal moment in my journey in Spain.
was it a social media job that you were working?
Yes, so I got hired for a Spanish startup to work on their marketing team with the US market, and it was a social media position. Although I had not a lot of experience in social media. So it was
Mhm.
kind of like luck and just being in the right place at the right time.
And what was that like? What was that working experience like?
Oh man, it was not good.
Yeah, it's funny because I also moved well, I won't get too much into my story, but there's so many similarities. You want
Yeah.
to escape your working life in the United States, you move to another country, then you find yourself in a similar environment. So we'll get into how, it's not just the location, it's also finding other things. But I'm curious to hear, but it's also, it shows that you just have to keep on trying. You just have to keep on trying different options. But so what was this like working as a social media person for this Spanish company?
Yeah, so they were a tech startup, and I had left a tech company in the US. And, if you're familiar with tech companies, it's the beer on tap. And at the time, we could work from home once a week, which was like so progressive. And, it's just like a fun work environment. That's what
It's
a
a
lot of
type
people.
of job, if you tell someone, they're like, oh, that sounds cool.
Yeah, so that
And
was
you're
the
never
tech
supposed to
world.
want to leave a job like that.
Yeah, they want to keep you there.
Hmm.
But so that was my tech job experience. And now I got hired at a tech startup in Spain, in Madrid. And it was not like that. There were a lot of rules. It was quite conservative. I had to take lunch at a certain time every day, and it was very rigid. And that was just not working for me. On
Mm.
top of that, luckily, my team was very international. So I could speak Spanish, but it was, a lower level of Spanish. It wasn't really working level, I think. So I was able to speak English with my team. But 2 months after I got hired, my manager quit. And I don't know why the CEO made me the manager of this team. So now I,
Oh my gosh. Wow.
I'm a
2 weeks?
manager. 2 months, 2 months.
Oh, 2 months, 2 months. Oh my gosh.
So that just put so much pressure on me because even though I could really talk to my team in English, I had to go to like department meetings and that was in Spanish. And just trying to navigate the working world in a different culture and a different language was way too much. And it's really not what I came to Spain to do. I did not come to Spain to work a 9 to 5 like I was doing in the US, that I, was a serial job hopper. So why would I think this would work here?
Yeah.
So very quickly, 6 months after I got hired, I had to quit because it was like my anxiety was out of control and I
Hmm.
really just wasn't enjoying my life. And so I
Yeah.
quit that job knowing that I would lose my visa also, and I
Wow.
would be at ground zero again trying to figure this out.
Wow. And so, what was that like when you quit? What did you do next? What was going through your mind, and what did you do next?
Yeah. It was tough because I was now maybe 36, about to turn 37, came to Spain, found a way out of teaching English, lost that. And now it's like, what do I do? But luckily, in that experience, I had gained social media skills and I had been doing things on the side too to polish those skills. And I thought, let me try to find a remote job. I mean, in 2017, people had remote jobs, but it wasn't very prevalent. But I was like, let me try. And that was my plan. There was a visa I could qualify for. It wasn't the digital nomad visa. It was like a retirement visa. You don't have to be retired to have it. And so I would, I applied to a lot of remote jobs using platforms online, jobs outside of Spain,
Hmm.
and I had to start from the bottom. I remember one of my first gigs was like a 6 week gig, and I got paid $12 an hour. But
So,
you know,
almost like freelance work.
it was freelance work, and I had to start somewhere. I had to build my portfolio so that I
Hmm.
could level up, and that's what I moved into.
And another big thing about moving abroad is finding community. And I think this is around the time when you start getting really into that. Is that correct? You start trying to build your community in Spain. And can you talk about that a little bit?
Yeah, because around this time I had been in Spain 2.5 years. I would call myself extroverted. I'm social. So I was putting in the work to make friends in Madrid, but I wasn't really finding my people. I had a lot of acquaintances. So a lot of people I could hang out with, but they weren't really my ride or dies or the people I was going to, remain friends with, while I was in Spain. So I thought, I had been learning all these social media skills. I just wanted to meet people who were doing creative things like I was. And so I started a community for bloggers and creatives. And that really took off. And that's where I met a lot of my friends that I still have to this day from that community. And it was kind of, started on a whim. And it ended up being, the largest community for content creators in Madrid, and ran for 3 years until COVID hit. Um,
Ah, really? Was that through, did you do it through meetup.com or was that a Facebook group?
yeah,
Meetup.
it was both. It was a Facebook group, but we also, we advertise on or showcase ourselves on Meetup also.
It was for Madrid bloggers, was that correct? Or Spanish bloggers?
Yeah, it was the Madrid Blogger Network. Yeah.
I love that. So when you can't find community, create it yourself. When I lived abroad, I also
Oh my God, we're living
start
parallel lives.
started meetups. To me, one of the most, I will say, one of the most, I was thinking about it the other day, one of the most valuable online web applications, and it's not like I use it every day, but in throughout my life has been meetup.com. I have met so many people through meetup.com. I started using it when I was living in Spain. And I think the first meetup I ever went to was probably in 2010 or something. I mean, I started right at the beginning. And that is such a valuable resource. And if you don't find the meetup that you want to join, you can always start your own meetup group, chess players in Spain or what have you.
I
But
agree.
I think that's really cool. And then you started She It Refresh, which is such a cool community. The concept of the community, women who want to refresh their lives abroad over the age of 30. How
Yeah.
did that idea come about?
Yes. So luckily I had, the Madrid Blogger Network experience under my belt. I had created community. It was thriving. I was running a Facebook group for it. And, I just got the idea to start a Facebook group for women over 30 who wanted to move abroad because a lot of my friends in the US were asking how I did it. And there was a lot of fear-based questions too, like my family, like, didn't you think you were too old? What about career? All that stuff. But at the same time, I was meeting incredible women in Madrid, my age and older, who had done it. And I just thought, let's just put these women in a Facebook group and we can help each other. It was not a business idea. There was nothing more behind it other than like, I have access to these two groups. I know how to do a Facebook group. Let's just put them in there and see what happens.
And what was it like at first? Were people, were they active? Were they sharing ideas? What was that first days like in that
Yeah.
community?
Well, I started it with a friend, so my bestie, who was actually on that Morocco trip that kind of started it all. And we invited our friends to the community. I mean, I didn't really have anyone to invite other than people I knew, right? So I invited my friends and some of the people I knew in Madrid. And, I was a little bit strategic in the sense, like, I was scheduling posts and coming up with topic ideas to talk about.
Hmm.
So I did nurture the community, but in the first year, we had 4,000 members worldwide just through word of mouth. And that was really like
That's amazing.
another pivotal moment. Thank you.
Yeah, that is a pivotal moment. I guess you realize, wow, there's a lot of women out there over the age of 30 who want to move abroad. That
Exactly. We realized, yeah, that there was a niche out there. There was a sector that just wasn't being served and really was um, really looking for resources that spoke to them and understood them.
Now, when you were in this era of being a freelancer and starting the Facebook group, is this around the same time that you started the podcast, or did that come a little bit later?
Yes, the podcast. I can try to remember when I started it. I started it, I think, 2 years later. So I think the Facebook group started in 2017, and I believe the podcast maybe started in 2019. I want to say.
2019?
I think.
But there must have been a point there where you were doing a lot. You had a freelancing Facebook group, podcast. Did you do that all at the same time?
Yeah, sort of. And I was doing the blog and the social media, and we were doing retreats. It was a lot, but I tell you, I was, and I still am, was just like so fulfilled by the work that I was doing. Like I was addicted to it. I couldn't, it was like so hard to walk away from it. I remember just staying up, doing my 9 to 5 or doing my remote work hours. Um, and then staying up late at night to just be in the Facebook group and read what was going on and comment or work on a blog post or think of something else, prepare for a meetup I wanted to have. Like I was addicted to the work. So it didn't feel like a burden. It was actually, something that I loved.
It was a passion project. And so when did
It
you
was a
finally just decide to completely focus on that and let go of the freelancing work?
Yes. So I did. I fully committed to She Here Refresh. I think it was 2 years ago now. So maybe 2020, what are we in? 2024? I think 2022 is when I
Cool.
fully committed. Yeah. 2022,
Was
January,
that
February.
scary, or were you just completely ready? That's the end of this interview so far. If you want to watch the other half of this interview or see how another woman reinvented herself over the age of 35, you can click on this next video here or on the playlist there or in the description box below. And please let me know, how would you reinvent yourself? Please write your answer in the comments below. And if you like this video, the number one way that you can say thanks to me is to hit the subscribe button and then hit the thumbs up button for this video.